Hello everyone, welcome to my channel.
It was supposed to be the happiest night of my life, my dad's 65th birthday. The lights in our backyard twinkled, laughter echoed, and I stood there with a velvet box hidden behind my back. Inside was a single key to a penthouse overlooking Seattle's skyline. My father had spent his whole life fixing other people's broken lights. That night, I wanted to light up his world. When he opened the box, his hands trembled. "Lily, this is too much," he whispered, tears pooling in his eyes. "You've already given me everything." I laughed through my own tears. "No, Dad, you gave me everything. This is just me catching up." That night, he hugged me tighter than he had in years. I thought I'd finally done something perfect. Months later, I would learn that perfection doesn't last, especially when family and envy collide. Dad's birthday dinner was loud, messy, and full of love, exactly how he liked it. My mom had made her famous roast, the kind that filled the whole house with the smell of garlic and thyme. My sister Nora sat across from me, her husband Derek checking his phone every few minutes, pretending to be interested. I didn't care. Tonight was about Dad. He'd spent 40 years as an electrician, the man everyone in the neighborhood called when the lights went out. He never charged the elderly, never complained about crawling through attics in freezing winters. He was quiet, steady, the kind of man who kept everything running, including our family. After dessert, I stood up and clinked my glass. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling, "you've spent your whole life fixing things for other people. Now it's my turn to fix something for you." Everyone turned to look. Mom's hand went to her mouth. I took out the small velvet box and handed it to him. "Happy birthday." He opened it slowly. When he saw the key inside, his brows furrowed. "What's this?" "It's to your new home," I said softly. "A penthouse at Mirren Residences overlooking the bay." For a moment, the room went still. Then Mom gasped, and tears filled her eyes. "Lily, you didn't—" "I did," I said, smiling through my nerves. "You both deserve a place where you don't have to worry about leaks or bills or noisy neighbors. Somewhere beautiful, peaceful finally." Dad looked down at the key, then at me. His lips trembled. "Sweetheart, this is too much. Not for the man who worked every Christmas so our lights stayed on," I said. "Not for the woman who sold pies just to buy my school uniform. This is for both of you." He stood and hugged me. His arms were strong but shaking. "I don't know what I did to deserve a daughter like you." Behind him, Nora's voice cut through the emotion. "Wow, Lily," she said, smiling tight. "You really went all out this year." Her tone was polite, but I caught the edge beneath it, a note of disbelief or jealousy. Still, I ignored it. That night, when we drove to show them the penthouse, Dad was like a kid seeing the world for the first time. He ran his fingers along the glass walls, looked out over the city lights and whispered, "Feels like a dream." Mom turned to me, eyes shining. "Thank you, honey. You've given us more than we ever imagined." As I watched them stand by the balcony, silhouetted against the Seattle skyline, I felt a warmth in my chest, the kind that made every struggle, every lonely night on the road, worth it. If only I'd known how quickly that warmth would turn to ice. For the first few months, everything felt exactly as I'd hoped. Every Sunday morning, I'd wake up to a video call from Mom. She'd sit on the penthouse balcony wrapped in a soft shawl, the wind teasing her gray hair. Behind her, the skyline shimmered like glass and gold. "Your father's obsessed with the espresso machine," she'd laugh. "He makes 4 cups a day and still forgets to clean it." Dad would appear in the background, pretending to be offended. "At least I'm learning, Lily. You should see me pressing all these fancy buttons." I'd laugh, my heart light. That apartment had become everything I wanted for them: comfort, pride, safety. They finally looked like they were living the life they'd always deserved. Nora called occasionally too, though never to talk to me. She'd text Mom pictures of her kids, complain about her mortgage, or mention how far her commute was from the suburbs. Mom, in her gentle way, always invited her to visit the penthouse. "There's space for everyone," she'd say. I should have known that sentence would be the start of everything. Work took me away: speaking events, conferences, flights to London, Sydney, Berlin. I was living my dream. Yet part of me longed for those quiet mornings with Mom's laughter and Dad's silly coffee jokes. Then, one week, their calls stopped. At first, I thought it was nothing. Maybe their Wi-Fi was down. Maybe they were busy visiting Nora's family. But when a week turned into 2, unease crept in. My messages stayed unread. Calls went straight to voicemail. One evening, exhausted from a flight, I decided to check the building's management office. I wanted to make sure everything was okay. Maybe Dad had changed numbers again. "Hello," I said over the phone. "This is Lily Blake, co-owner of Unit 4207. I'm trying to reach my parents." The woman on the other end paused. "Oh, Mrs. Wallace?" I froze. "I'm sorry, who?" "Mrs. Wallace, the current resident. She and her husband moved in about 6 weeks ago." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Wallace was Nora's married name. "I think there's a mistake," I managed to say. "This property belongs to my parents, Isaac and Mary Blake." The receptionist's voice softened, unsure. "I'm sorry, Miss Blake. The files show the previous tenants moved out voluntarily. Everything's in order." Voluntarily? My parents would never leave without telling me. As I hung up, my hands trembled. Outside my hotel window, London's lights flickered bright, distant, meaningless. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. And I knew, right then, that no flight, no distance, no success in the world could keep me from finding out what my sister had done. By the next morning, my ticket home to Seattle was booked. The rain greeted me when I landed in Seattle, as if the sky itself knew something had gone wrong. I drove straight from the airport to the Mirren residences, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The lobby looked the same: elegant marble floors, golden lights, soft music echoing through the air. The security guard smiled politely. "Welcome back, Miss Blake," he said. "Your sister mentioned you might be visiting soon." My stomach turned. My sister mentioned me? I took the elevator to the 42nd floor, each ding of the passing floors echoing like a countdown. When the doors opened, the hallway smelled faintly of lavender, just as I remembered, but something felt off. The air was too still, too quiet. I knocked 3 times on the penthouse door. Footsteps approached, and then I saw her. Nora stood there in a silk robe, hair perfectly curled, holding a steaming cup of coffee like she owned the place. "Lily," she said flatly, her brows lifting as though I were an unexpected delivery. "You're back early." I tried to smile, but my voice shook. "Where are Mom and Dad?" She hesitated, then took a slow sip. "They decided city life wasn't for them. Too noisy, too high up. They went back to Spokane." I blinked, my mind racing. "They left? Without telling me?" Her husband, Derek, stepped out from the kitchen wearing Dad's old cardigan. The sight made my chest tighten. He leaned against the counter casually. "They asked us to stay here for a while," he said. "Said they wanted someone to keep the place tidy." "Tidy?" I repeated, my tone sharp. "This is their home." Nora smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "They said they weren't comfortable here, Lily. You know how Dad hates elevators." I looked past her. The apartment was spotless, the white leather couch gleamed, the dining table sparkled, but something vital was missing. No scent of Mom's cinnamon candles, no newspaper by the window, no warmth. It felt like a stranger's house. "I want to talk to them," I said firmly. "Where exactly are they staying?" Nora shrugged. "Back in the old place, I think. They didn't say much before leaving. Honestly, you should have seen them, they looked relieved." "Enley, it's not no bray." The lie slipped out of her mouth too smoothly. I could hear it in her tone, that slight tremor she always had when she was bluffing. My throat tightened. You kicked them out, didn't you?" She laughed lightly. "Don't be dramatic. They left on their own." But as I stood there, looking at the penthouse that once symbolized love and gratitude, I realized something far darker had taken root. My sister wasn't just visiting, she had taken over. And whatever she'd done to drive our parents out, I was going to find out no matter what it cost me. I didn't sleep that night. I just drove. The rain chased me along the highway like an accusation, splattering the windshield in angry bursts. Every mile closer to Spokane felt heavier, darker. I replayed Nora's smug smile in my mind until it made my stomach twist. When I finally pulled into our old neighborhood, the world was quiet. The little wooden house where I grew up sat in darkness. The curtains were drawn. The porch light, the one Dad never forgot to turn on, was dead. I ran up the path and knocked. Once, twice, harder. "Mom?" Dad? My voice cracked in the cold night air. No answer. I circled to the back, hoping to see their shadows through the kitchen window, but everything was empty. Only a faint smell of damp wood and dust. Lily? A shaky voice called. I turned to see Mrs. Whitaker, our old neighbor, standing in her doorway in a pink robe, her white hair frizzed from sleep. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Oh dear child, you're back. I rushed toward her. Mrs. Whitaker, where are my parents? Are they inside? She hesitated, pressing a hand to her chest. No, sweetheart. They're not here. Isaac's been in the hospital for weeks now. Sacred Heart Medical Center. He collapsed. The world tilted beneath me. Collapsed? She nodded sadly. Your mother's been staying there day and night. Hardly eats. You should go, dear. They need you. By the time I reached the hospital, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely fill out the visitor form. The nurse led me down a sterile hallway to room 214. When I pushed open the door, I saw Mom first, her head bowed, her fingers curled around Dad's pale hand. Mom, I whispered. She looked up, her face hollow with exhaustion, then gasped. Lily? She stood, trembling, and threw her arms around me. Oh, thank God. Dad lay motionless, his breathing shallow. Machines beeped softly beside him. What happened? I asked, my voice breaking. Tears streamed down Mom's cheeks. It was raining that night. We were arguing with Nora and Derek. Your father tried to stand his ground, but Nora said. Her words faltered. I gripped her hand. Said what? She said we were embarrassing you. Mom choked out. That we didn't belong in such a fancy place. That you only gave it to us out of pity. Isaac tried to stop her, told her she was wrong, but she laughed. She called him old-fashioned, said we were a burden. My heart clenched so hard I thought it might break. Your father couldn't take it, she continued, her voice trembling. He said, Eleanor, pride is all we have left. Then he packed a small bag and walked out into the storm. I begged him to wait, but he wouldn't. He said he'd rather sleep in the rain than stay where he wasn't wanted. It's Stan Load. I buried my face in my hands, the guilt crashing over me like the thunder that had chased him that night. The gift I'd given with love had become the reason he nearly died. I turned to Mom, my jaw set. I'm going to fix this, I said quietly, no matter what it takes. She just nodded, eyes red, whispering the same words I once told Dad on his birthday. You've already given us everything, Lily. But I knew she was wrong. I hadn't even started yet. Dad woke up 3 days later. His voice was barely a whisper, but his eyes, those kind, steady eyes I'd known since childhood, were still full of warmth. Hey there, Trouble, he murmured, smiling faintly when he saw me by his bedside. Didn't think you'd fly all the way home just to watch me nap. I tried to laugh, but the sound cracked in my throat. You scared me, Dad. You really did. He squeezed my hand, his grip weak but sure. Don't blame your sister too much, sweetheart. People make bad choices when they feel small. His words only twisted the knife deeper. Even lying in a hospital bed, hooked to machines, he was still protecting the people who had hurt him. After making sure Mom ate something for the first time in days, I stepped out into the hallway, my mind already spinning with plans. I wasn't going to scream or beg. That wouldn't fix anything. I needed to take back control the right way. That evening, I met with our family lawyer, Michael Grant, a tall man with silver hair and a calm, measured tone. He listened silently as I told him everything. The eviction, the storm, my father's collapse, my sister's lies. When I finished, my voice was shaking. I want them out. I don't care how long it takes. Michael folded his hands. You and your father are co-owners of the Penthouse, correct? Yes, I said. But he's not well enough to handle this. Then you'll need power of attorney, he replied. Once your father signs it, we can begin the process of eviction. But be patient, Lily. If you act too quickly, they could twist the law against you. I nodded, swallowing my frustration. I'll wait, but I'm not letting this go. The next week passed in a haze of hospital visits and paperwork. Every night, I stayed by Dad's bed, helping him sip water, reading him his favorite detective novels, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was burning. When he was strong enough to hold a pen, I placed the papers before him. His hand trembled as he signed, but his eyes never wavered. "Do what's right, Lily," he said quietly. "Not what's angry." I bent down and kissed his forehead. "I promise." The following morning, as I drove back to Seattle, the clouds parted just enough for sunlight to break through. It poured across the road like a promise, fragile but real. The penthouse towered ahead, glass glittering in the daylight. Once, it had been a symbol of pride. Now, it was a reminder of betrayal. I parked in front of the building, exhaled and whispered to myself, "No more running." It was time to reclaim what was stolen, not just the apartment, but my parents' dignity. And deep down, I knew Nora wouldn't give it up easily, but neither would I. When I walked back into the Miran residences, the place didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battlefield wrapped in marble and glass. The receptionist looked startled when I walked up to the desk, suitcase in hand. "I'm here to check in," I said, smiling faintly. "Penthouse 4207. Her eyes darted uncertainly. "Miss Blake, your sister." "I'm a co-owner," I interrupted softly, sliding my ID and copy of the deed across the counter. "Please inform security that I'll be staying indefinitely." By the time the elevator reached the 42nd floor, I'd steadied my breathing. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. When the door opened, Nora appeared, her hair in a towel, irritation already twisting her face. "What are you doing here?" I rolled my suitcase inside without asking. "Living in my home." She blocked my path. "You can't just—" "I can," I said coolly. "And I will." Over the next few days, I made my presence impossible to ignore. I woke up at dawn, brewed coffee, and turned on the jazz station Dad loved. I scheduled maintenance crews to check the air vents, the plumbing, the heating, every small thing that could possibly need attention. The hum of drills and the clatter of ladders echoed through the penthouse from sunrise to noon. Derek complained first. "You're making this place unlivable." I looked up from my laptop and smiled sweetly. "Just keeping things up to standard. You know, co-owner responsibilities." Nora was worse. She stormed around the apartment, slamming doors and muttering under her breath. Once, I caught her whispering to Derek in the kitchen. "She's doing this on purpose. She wants to drive us out." She was right. Every move I made was precise, lawful, and utterly suffocating. I transferred all utility accounts to my name. I spoke with building management, informing them that any repairs or permissions now required my approval. The power dynamic had shifted quietly, invisibly but completely. Then came the eviction notice. Michael, my lawyer, filed it under my father's authorization. A neatly worded document, polite yet firm. 7 days to vacate the property or face legal enforcement. I found Nora reading it at the dining table when I came home that night. Her hands trembled as she reached the final line. Derek hovered behind her, pale and silent. "This is a joke, right?" she said finally, her voice brittle. "No joke," I said, setting my bag down. "You wanted to live like owners. Now you can deal with the paperwork that comes with it." "You're pathetic," she spat. "You think this makes you better than me?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't see my sister. I saw a stranger who'd traded love for envy. "No," I said quietly. "It doesn't make me better. It just makes me done." The next morning, Nora avoided me entirely. She stayed in her room, curtains drawn, while I opened every window and let the sunlight flood in. For the first time in months, the apartment smelled like fresh air instead of bitterness. 7 days. That was all they had left, and I was finally breathing again. The final day felt unnervingly calm, like the air right before a thunderstorm. I could feel it humming under my skin. 7 days. 7 days since the notice was served. 7 days of silence from Nora and Derek. And tonight, it was about to end. Rain streaked down the windows in angry rivers as I sat alone in the penthouse living room. Lights dimmed, waiting. The apartment was spotless again, but it didn't feel like peace. It felt like a stage before the curtain drops. The door burst open at 8:47 p.m. Nora stormed in, her hair soaked, eyes bloodshot, a wrinkled envelope crushed in her hand. Derek followed behind her, suitcase half-zipped, face pale. "Are you happy now?" she shouted, her voice echoing off the glass. "You finally got what you wanted, didn't you? Mom and Dad on your side, me out in the rain, everyone praising perfect Lily again." I stood slowly. This isn't about sides, Nora. It's about what you did. She let out a bitter laugh. Oh, please. I didn't do anything you wouldn't have done. You bought them this penthouse just to show off. Don't act like it was some grand act of love. I took a step forward, my voice trembling but steady. You really think that? That I went into debt just to outshine you? You didn't do it for them, she hissed. You did it for yourself. So everyone could look at you and say, she's the good daughter. Her words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Somewhere deep inside, maybe I had been trying to prove something. But that didn't excuse her cruelty. I made mistakes, I said quietly, but I never would have humiliated them the way you did. You called them a burden, Nora. You told Dad he didn't belong here. You broke him. She flinched, the corner of her lip trembling. He shouldn't have argued with me. I was trying to protect him, protect us from embarrassment. Do you have any idea what people said? That we didn't belong in a place like this. That the Blakes were just small-town nobodies. I felt my heart twist. So, instead of proving them wrong, you decided to prove them right? By throwing your parents into a storm? Don't twist it, she screamed, voice cracking. You weren't here. You have no idea what it was like living under the shadow of your success, hearing Mom brag about her golden child every single call. The thunder outside boomed as if echoing her rage. I took a deep breath, fighting the lump in my throat. You think I haven't felt small too? You think I don't carry guilt every time I get on a plane while they're alone at home? I wanted to make it right, Nora. That's all I ever wanted. Her expression faltered, tears mixing with the rain dripping from her hair. You always make it sound so easy, she whispered. Like love fixes everything. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. It doesn't. But it's all we had left and you threw it away. For a long moment, she said nothing. The storm howled against the windows. Derek shifted uncomfortably behind her, his hand tightening on the suitcase handle. Finally, Nora's shoulders slumped. You win, she said hoarsely. Take your stupid apartment. Take your parents' love. I'm done fighting for scraps. She turned to leave, but I caught her wrist gently. Nora. She looked back, eyes red, face twisted between hatred and heartbreak. I never wanted to win, I whispered. I just wanted my sister back. For the first time in years, she didn't have an answer. Her lip quivered, but she said nothing. Derek placed a hand on her shoulder. Come on, he murmured. They left without another word. When the door closed, the silence hit me like a punch. I sank onto the sofa, tears spilling freely, the city lights flickering beyond the glass. My chest ached not from victory, but from loss. I glanced toward the balcony where Dad once stood, looking at the skyline like it was his miracle. I could almost hear his voice again. You can fix a light, Lily, but not a heart that's burned itself out. The storm raged on outside, lightning tearing across the sky. And as I sat there, surrounded by everything I thought was worth fighting for, I realized something profound. The hardest part of love isn't losing it. It's choosing to let it go. The next morning, Seattle was quiet again. The storm had passed, leaving puddles that shimmered in the sunrise. The city looked cleaner, lighter, as if even the sky had decided to start over. I stood by the balcony, staring down at the wet streets below, my reflection ghostly in the glass. The penthouse was finally silent, truly mine, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt hollow. Boxes were stacked by the wall. The movers would arrive in an hour. I'd already made the decision. The penthouse wasn't my parents' dream anymore, and it had stopped being mine the moment it became a battlefield. When I walked through its empty rooms one last time, I could still see the ghosts of what should have been, Mom arranging flowers by the window, Dad tinkering with the lamp, both of them laughing about how fancy it all was. I touched the countertop where Mom used to roll dough during her visits and whispered, I'm sorry. That afternoon, I met with Michael Grant, my lawyer. The sale went through faster than I expected. Are you sure about this? He asked gently, signing the final page. I nodded. Some things you let go of to heal. This place is one of them. He smiled faintly. Your father would be proud of how you handled this, Lily. I hope so, I said softly. But I don't think pride is what I'm chasing anymore. When I returned to Spokane a few days later, the air smelled of pine and wet earth. The little wooden house repaired, freshly painted, with a new light on the porch stood exactly as I remembered. Mom opened the door before I even reached the steps. "Lily," she said, her voice trembling with warmth. "You're home." I hugged her tight. Dad sat in his favorite chair, a wool blanket over his knees, smiling at me like he'd been waiting his whole life for this moment. "Well," he said, chuckling, "looks like we're back where we belong." I knelt beside him, resting my head on his shoulder. "I sold the penthouse, Dad. I'm sorry." He chuckled again, patting my hand. "Don't be." That place was beautiful, but it never felt like home. He gestured around the tiny living room. The crackling fireplace, the old photos on the wall, this is home. Because we're together. His words washed over me like sunlight after rain. For the first time in months, I felt peace. A month later, I used the money from the sale to open something new, the Blake Family Foundation, a community center on the outskirts of Spokane. Its mission was simple: to help elderly people who'd lost their homes find shelter and dignity again. On opening day, Dad cut the red ribbon himself, hands still trembling but steady enough to hold the scissors. Mom stood beside him, tears glistening. The crowd clapped, but all I saw was their joy. "This is the best thing you've ever done, sweetheart," Mom whispered. I smiled through tears. "No, Mom. The best thing I ever did was come home." As the sun dipped below the hills, I stepped outside and looked up at the fading sky. Somewhere out there, my sister was probably starting over too. Maybe one day, she'd remember who we were before pride tore us apart. I didn't hate her anymore. I just hoped she'd find her own peace, the way I finally had. That night, as I sat on the porch between my parents, the warm light spilling from the windows behind us, Dad sighed contentedly. "You know, Lily," he said, "for someone who used to chase the sky, you sure found your way back to the ground." I laughed softly, leaning against him. "Yeah, Dad. I think that's exactly where I belong." The porch light flickered once, just like old times, and for a moment, everything was simple again. 3 people, 1 home, and a peace no storm could ever take away.